Next month marks my 10th wedding anniversary, and my husband and I decided to do something to commemorate this significant milestone. Okay, no, we are not having a fourth kid. We are not making new wedding bands. We are not taking a trip because our children's schools are closed that day. We decided to change our mattress, which has been with us since the day we got married. Actually, I am perfectly fine to continue sleeping on it. But 10 years on, my husband has not just lost muscles, he now has increasing back pains. During his most recent flare-up, he told me that we need to change out to a firmer mattress. So last month, we went down to a bedding shop and told the lady straight up that we want the firmest mattress. We tested out the two options the shop had to offer, and Abel asked me which I prefer. I said, it doesn't really matter for me because I sleep well on any kind of mattress. In the end, we went with the more expensive one that's guaranteed to give us a good night's rest. So my husband, waited excitedly for the new mattress to arrive, and at last it came. After 2 nights of sleeping on the new mattress, I asked Abel, how is it? He said, very shook. He hasn't slept so well in a while. And I said, really? My body is aching because of how hard the bed is. I kid you not, I thought I was sleeping on the floor. I learned 2 things from this episode. First, this is what marriage is like, even after 10 years. You still have differences, and you've got to continue putting each other's interests first to make it work. Second, it is not so easy to have a good rest. You can optimize the environmental factors, but that does not guarantee that you will feel well rested. Yet, just like how humans are wired to need food and water, our bodies and souls cannot survive without rest. Rest is a fundamental need because as beings made in God's image, we have been created to follow God's pattern of work and rest. The Bible tells us that after God created the heavens and earth and all that is in it in 6 days, He rested from all His work on the 7th day. That is not because God was physically exhausted. God does not grow weary or tired. Instead, it was because His work was complete and very good. God's rest was a celebration of sufficiency and completeness. Christianity teaches that it was God who established the practice of rest, and He wants His people to do the same. You may not have spent a small fortune like my husband and I on your mattress, but one thing's for sure. All of us want rest. I'm sure some of you feel like you lack rest. Living in a fast-paced society like Singapore, many of us find it hard to rest, be it physically or internally, like the kind of rest that God demonstrated. That is why I prepared this series. Over these 3 weeks, I want to explore the reasons we have difficulty resting, what rest is truly about, and how we can practically find rest. This morning, let's start with why we struggle to rest. If you were being asked this question, what would your reply be? Most of us would instantly think of packed schedules, endless work, heavy responsibilities, and the lack of sleep. All that is true, but they don't fully explain the problem. Just recall the times when you took a holiday, got enough sleep, or even cleared your to-do list, but you still feel unsettled, weary, or unable to be at peace. What else explains why we are unable to completely and constantly be at rest? Let's look at a passage in the Bible found in Genesis chapter 3. Reading from verse 17, to Adam, he said, because you listened to your wife and ate fruit from the tree about which I commanded you, you must not eat from it. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat fruit from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. By the sweat of your brow, you will eat your food. Until you return to the ground, since from it you were taken, for dust you are, and to dust you will return. When God created the world, everything was perfect, including the pattern of work and rest. However, the first man and woman, Adam and Eve, disobeyed God's command. Their disobedience introduced sin into the world and messed up God's original design, causing every aspect of human life to suffer the consequences. But how exactly has it affected God's gift of rest to us? For the rest of us, I want to share 3 reasons from this passage why we struggle to rest. And they apply universally to all of us, whether you are a believer or not. I hope that by understanding the problem, we can find the appropriate solution. And the first reason is inefficiency. The guys who have been through national service will be able to identify the frustrations of inefficiency. I wouldn't know, but I've heard this phrase multiple times that I think sums it all up. It says, rush to wait, wait to rush. I had a good laugh when I first heard it. It helped me picture what life in the army camps is like for the brothers. They are often hurried only for them to end up waiting. When work is inefficient, whether in the army, in school, at work, or at home, we burn more energy than necessary on tasks that could be done more simply or quickly. As a result, we feel drained. The Bible explains why so much of the work that we do feels laborious and unproductive. After God formed Adam, He assigned Adam to take care of the Garden of Eden and told Adam that he's free to eat from any tree in the garden, except from the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. Otherwise, he would die. However, Adam and Eve ate from the tree. Because God is holy, He cannot overlook their sin. If He ignores their disobedience, He will deny His own character and make His word meaningless. So for rebelling against God's clear command, God pronounced judgment on Adam. Let's read verse 17 again. Cursed is the ground because of you. Through painful toil, you will eat food from it all the days of your life. It will produce thorns and thistles for you, and you will eat the plants of the field. Notice that God did not curse Adam. He cursed the ground because of Adam. Before the curse, the conditions of the ground were perfectly balanced for growth. God made all kinds of trees grow out of the ground, trees that were pleasing to the eye and good for food. The ground was abundant as it freely produced food. But after the curse, the ground now produces thorns and thistles. Do you know what they do? Thorns and thistles steal nutrients from the crop. They grow quickly and crowd out the crops. They are sharp and scratch the gardener when he works. In short, thorns and thistles force you to work harder but get less return. The ground did not stop producing food, but the process became frustratingly inefficient. Adam has to work much harder than before. Now, we can understand how the curse affected the work that Adam did. What about us? If you're a student, you slog through the entire syllabus only to be tested on a fraction of it in the exam. You spend hours polishing an assignment that counts for just a small percentage of your grade. The effort feels far greater than the return. If you're an office worker, you sit in meetings that drag on too long, happen too often, and without clear decisions, robbing time from your real work. You pour in long hours, but have no guarantee it will be noticed in your appraisal. And before finishing one task, the next one lands on your desk. No matter how fast you work, the pile never seems to end. For people who do sales, you pitch your product again and again, explaining the same things to countless customers, yet only a handful turn into actual deals. So much sweat, so little visible fruit. If you're in civil service, you fight through layers of approvals, endless forms, and repeated back and forth. What should take a day can drag on for weeks, just to move one step forward. If you're a cell group leader in church, you pour your heart and energy into discipling your members. They take 3 steps forward, but 2 steps back. The process of discipleship can be slow and filled with setbacks. What if you're a pastor? For me, the process of preparing a sermon is arduous. It can take me a day just to write one point, because I have to rack my brains for suitable illustration, study the passages to ensure I explain them correctly, and examine what other preachers say about it. Hopefully, this gets better over time, but regardless how much experience I accumulate, writing a sermon will never be an easy task, because verse 17 says that this painful toil will be for all the days of life. That's why I have been joking with the people around me that I will be the least rested person throughout this series. And you know what my CG said? They told me, correct ma, because it's for the rest of us, not you. It's good to go for CG. Got users or CG mates to help you put things into perspective. And one major obstacle that is common to many of us are the people we work with. They can be uncaring bosses, selfish colleagues, or unreasonable customers. All these taunts and teasels create longer hours, constant stress, and unfinished tasks, which keeps us from resting. No one is spared from the effects of the curse, no matter the kind of work you do. Ecclesiastes chapter 2, verse 22. What do people get for all the toil and anxious striving with which they labor under the sun? All their days, their work is grief and pain, even at night. Their minds do not rest. This too is meaningless. The author explores the meaning of life under the sun, which simply means life on earth. His conclusion? Work is endless labor, fleeting satisfaction, and sleepless anxiety. The worker lies awake, anxious about unfinished tasks or the future. Sounds very much like us. That's why the Bible is timeless. A point to note is that work is not meaningless in itself. God gave work as a good thing, but the curse of Genesis 3 made it burdensome. Work became inefficient, and we have to work much harder than before the fall, which is why we struggle to rest. That's the first reason. The second reason is insecurity. Private hire vehicle driver Gavin Neo worked up to 15 hours a day, starting in the afternoon and continuing through the night until it was time to send his children to school in the morning. He often told friends he worked tirelessly for his two children, aged 17 and 13. On May 29 this year, Neo passed away at the age of 49 after suffering a sudden stroke. His death was a wake-up call for those in the industry looking to cash in on working long hours. Private hire drivers that Channel News Asia spoke to said that while they have the freedom to choose the number of hours they work, incentive structures by ride-hailing platforms can push them beyond their limits. One of them said that the motivation to drive long hours is only one thing: money. The more they drive, the more they earn. Another driver said she slogs on despite her health problems to earn a living for herself and her aging parents. Interestingly, these drivers recognize that driving long hours is not sustainable and they need to take breaks to rest. However, the pressure is real. Every hour they work, they get paid. And if they don't, they lose out on this money. Their physical and economic survival are both literally at stake. After the fall in the garden, not only did the nature of work change, the reason for work has also changed. Verse 19, by the sweat of your brow, you will eat your food until you return to the ground. Initially, Adam's work was about stewardship, overseeing and caring for the garden. The work was joyful and meaningful. But since the ground no longer yields easily and food isn't freely given anymore, Adam's work becomes a painful survival. He must now sweat it out to procure food until he dies. This curse placed Adam under a constant insecurity, the fear that unless he worked non-stop, the ground would not provide enough for him and his family. Unfortunately, Adam's new condition set the pattern for all humanity, not just private hire drivers. Because we fear we won't have enough, resting feels risky. Every moment spent not doing work feels like we are going to fall behind. Because we fear we won't have enough, resting also feels guilty. When we take time to rest, there's an inner voice that says, I should be studying instead of wasting time. Is it really okay for me to not do anything and rest? That's why so many people experience guilt when they rest. Not because rest in itself is wrong, but because our insecurity makes rest feels like it is laziness or irresponsibility. Hence, even when you are lying down on your bed or when I'm on my expensive bed, our minds are still racing. Maybe some of you are thinking that this point about insecurity doesn't apply to you because you are not gig workers who are paid by the task or hour. However, even if you have enough, there will always still be a quiet, underlying worry about maintaining what you already have or losing it. And I witnessed it happening to my mom recently. My mom came from Malaysia to Singapore alone at the age of 15 to be a hairdressing apprentice. For the past 44 years, she has constantly worked long hours under harsh conditions. As she grew older, the work increasingly took a toll on her physical and mental health. Because up to last month, she was still working 10 hours a day for 6 days a week. Not only is her job physically taxing, but she must also deal with customers who can often be unkind and a terrible boss. Hence, she has been contemplating quitting. About 2 or 3 years ago, she got my help to prepare a resignation letter. She passed the letter to her boss, but quickly retracted it because she was worried it would be difficult to find another job given her age and she would lose her regular customers. She stayed on, but never stopped telling us how tired she is and how much she wished to stop working. She said she has enough saved for her retirement, so it's okay if she doesn't work for a while or work less. An unexpected opportunity came last month when her boss suddenly announced that the salon would be closing at the end of the month. I thought my mom would throw a major celebration, but she didn't. Instead, she started becoming anxious and restless, and increasingly so. Despite everything she said, and despite already having found a new salon to work at as a freelancer, the abrupt loss of job and fear of stepping into the unknown became real to her. That is understandable, but I also discovered another reason. Last Sunday, my mom told me that she'll be starting her work at the new place the next day, which is the Monday that just passed. And she had 2 appointments lined up. So I congratulated her, but she didn't look as happy as I thought she would be. Then she said, only 2 and only cut. Of all the hair services, cutting is one of the most basic and earns the hairdresser less money. Hairdressers prefer their customers go big with the dyes, perms, straightening, and treatment. I've witnessed my mom's struggles at work for a long time, and this recent development amused and puzzled me. Because instead of feeling relieved, my mom has been feeling insecure. I thought she would be glad to take a break and help more with my kids, but she immediately found a job. She has enough saved up, but she frets over the cut taken by the salon. I thought she would be happy to have her old customers following her, but she was disappointed that they were only going to do a basic haircut. Maybe because deep down, she is thinking, just to be safe, just a little bit more. Jesus knows that we all struggle with such fears. That's why he says in Matthew chapter 6, verse 25, "Therefore I tell you, do not worry about your life, what you will eat or drink, or about your body, what you will wear. Is not life more than food, and the body more than clothes?" Jesus was speaking to his disciples, and the crowd gathered for the Sermon on the Mount. The group was made up of ordinary people, farmers, fishermen, craftsmen, day laborers, many of whom lived day to day, not knowing if tomorrow would bring enough food or clothing. Their concern was survival. Today, almost all of us have enough to survive. Hence, if Jesus were to speak to us, I imagine this is what he would say instead. Do not be anxious about your life, what good food you will eat, or what expensive wine or latte you will drink, nor about your clothes, what kind you will wear. Even though we don't share the same survival fears as the first century people, we wrestle with a different set of insecurities. Instead of worrying where our next meal will come from, we think about whether we can reach or keep up with our dream standard of living. And so often, without even realizing it, we keep pushing ourselves to work harder, to secure not only what we need, but also what we want. Inefficiency makes rest difficult because work drags on longer than it should. But insecurity makes rest difficult because we fear that if we stop working, we won't have enough. The third and final reason why we struggle to rest is insignificance. In 1924, 6 men stood at the starting line of the 100-meter sprint finals at the Paris Olympics. But for one of them, the weight of the race went far beyond medals. As a Jewish athlete in Britain, Harold Abrahams had endured prejudice and the sense of being an outsider. Running became his way of proving his value to a skeptical world. Every race was a test, but the Olympic final compressed years of discipline, sacrifice, and expectation into one brief chance on the track. Amidst the intense pressure and fear Abraham felt leading up to the finals, he confessed this to a friend. I have 10 seconds in which to prove the reason for my existence. And even then, I'm not sure I will. Abraham was honest in acknowledging his fear that even if he won, the fleeting victory might not validate his life or silence the persistent feeling of insignificance that haunted him. If insecurity is the fear of not having enough, then insignificance is the fear of not being enough. For Abraham, being insignificant meant that despite his talent and effort, he might never prove his worth or earn the recognition that will make his life feel meaningful. For students, it is the fear that you are only worth as much as your academic results or the courses and schools you can get into. For workers, no matter how diligently you perform, your efforts might be overlooked or undervalued in a competitive, cutthroat environment. The piece of work you submit might never be good enough. For homemakers, your daily labor and care for your family might be unseen or unappreciated. For retirees, your experience, wisdom, and past achievements are no longer valued, leaving you struggling to find purpose and relevance. This sense of insignificance affects every single one of us, and the Bible helps us understand why. Verse 19, for thus you are, and to thus you will return. Adam was formed from the dust of the ground. This verse describes our origin and inevitable ending. In the vastness of the universe, humans are like dust, tiny, fragile, and inconsequential. We are just a speck in an infinite cosmos. And although death was not part of God's original plan for humans, Adam and Eve's disobedience brought about physical death. From that moment on, humans face mortality. Like dust, we will return to earth when our time is up. We are aware of our frailty, yet we also crave impact and legacy. Herein lies the tension between our finite existence and desire for significance. So what do? We use work as a way to justify our existence and drown out the voice that tells us we are not good enough. Students bury themselves in studying or take on extra projects and commitments to feel accomplished. Workers strive for flawless results to prove their value or measure themselves against colleagues to feel superior. Our sense of insignificance and what we need to do to cover it up is why it's hard for us to truly rest, physically and internally. Whatever your occupation is, beneath that work, there is always a deeper work, the work of justifying ourselves, our worth. And it is this deeper work that wears us out. Perhaps some of you are thinking the opposite. You don't tie your worth to work. You wish to stop working, get out of the rat race, and take a break. That's because you and I have had the fortune of not losing our jobs or be jobless for an extended period. Singapore is one of the world's lowest unemployment rates, but global unrest, economic uncertainty, and tech-driven changes have meant layoffs, retrenchments, and involuntary unemployment are becoming a reality for many. More than just a loss of financial security, job loss and other job-related changes can have a ripple effect on mental health and well-being too. A study showed that job loss consistently predicted subsequent major depression, with a greater effect in men. The question is, why? A psychiatrist who observed a spike in the number of depression cases here related to job changes said, many people are conditioned from a young age to define themselves by what they do and how much they earn. I see many patients who experience a loss of self-esteem, feelings of worthlessness and guilt when they lose their job. He also said, when removed from the role as a provider for the family, men may feel depressed and a loss of identity and purpose. Maybe that's an involuntary choice, and some of you deliberately wish to quit your job. Follow your heart, YOLO, and try fun employment. using a period of joblessness to pursue hobbies and relaxation instead of immediately finding a new job. A millennial shared her experience online. At first, it felt liberating not to wake up to a job. But after a month, fun employment lost its charm. She had planned to use her free time meaningfully, but ended up binge watching Netflix and playing video games. After sending 100 applications and receiving only 10 replies, job hunting became demoralizing, and she felt desperate. By the 4th month, her savings were running out, and she suffered 4 a.m. anxiety attacks and dark thoughts, questioning if she was simply not good enough for Singapore's workforce. Ironically, quitting for her mental health backfired. Simple word of caution, don't quit without a backup plan. Regardless of how tiring or difficult work may be, holding a job gives us a sense of purpose. Gives us a sense of worth because it provides both a way to contribute and a means to make a living. Yet beyond survival, our longing to know that we truly matter in this vast universe can also drive us to overwork and make it hard to rest. I believe this was another reason my mom felt uneasy without a job. She feared that if she stopped working, she would become forgotten, useless, or unimportant. We need rest, but we find it hard to rest. Why? Because work feels unproductive at times, we worry about not having enough, and our lives can feel small compared to how big the world is and how short life seems. So we keep working harder to make up for it and end up finding it hard to truly rest. Okay, now we understand the reasons. What's next? The world tells us that rest comes from time off, taking vacations, enjoying hobbies, and practicing self-care. Physical rest is important, and I'll be talking more about it in the third message. But now that we know the issues behind our restlessness are more than physical, I want you to know that the world's solutions won't solve the problem completely. Thankfully, God did not stop at pronouncing a curse on the ground. He also provided a solution. In Genesis chapter 3, verse 15, "And I will put enmity between you and the woman, and between your offspring and hers. He will crush your head, and you will strike his heel." Eve's offspring will defeat the serpent, which is the one that tempted Adam and Eve to sin. So through this offspring, who is Jesus Christ, the curse and its effects, which includes restlessness, will be reversed. How exactly does Jesus do it? Through an unexpected way. Jesus reverses the curse by taking it upon himself at the cross, bearing the penalty of sin and death in our place. Through his sacrifice and resurrection, he restores our broken relationship with God, giving us the security and significance that we have been trying to find in other places. And one day, he will remove the curse completely when he makes all things new, where death and striving will be no more. Because of Jesus, we now have God's approval. God says, "You are good enough. You don't have anything to prove anymore. Not because you earn it, but because of what Jesus has done. We no longer have to keep doing the work beneath the work. That work has been done by Jesus when he declared, 'It is finished' on the cross." That's why Jesus could say in Matthew chapter 11, verse 28, "Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest." Harold Abrahams did win the 100-meter gold medal at the 1924 Paris Olympics, achieving the goal he had built his whole life around. Yet he ran from a place of restlessness because his identity was tied to proving himself. In contrast, another man, Eric Liddell, who also competed in the same Olympics, ran from a place of restedness. He famously said this, "God made me fast, and when I run, I feel his pleasure." His peace came not from medals or recognition, but from knowing he was already accepted by God and did not have to prove himself. That's why he made the radical decision to drop out of his best event, the 100 meters, when the heats were scheduled on a Sunday, choosing to honor God on the Sabbath over Olympic glory. Though many criticized him, Little ran the 400 meters instead and won gold. You see, there are two ways to look at rest. The first is the world's way. You work from Monday to Friday waiting for the weekend to come. You rush to finish your work to go on a holiday. You dream of making so much money that you can retire early and never have to work another day in your life. This is the world's way. Work is a necessary evil that must be finished so you can have rest. But if this is your perspective, like most people, you will never find true rest. Christianity provides a better way. You work out of your rest. You have found your assurance and security, which are freely given to you through Jesus Christ. You no longer have to worry about not having enough or not being good enough. Work then becomes a joyful response of worship, which you do to honor God and serve other people. Then, like Jesus, you will be able to rest, even when the storms of life surround you.